Hello. Brief furore there. You'll have to excuse me. I have literally just had to scrabble to try and keep a very pesky cat from being in here. So my last 30 seconds has been extremely eventful. I'm literally out of breath, which probably says more about my health than anything else. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Telling Tales. This is us, or some of us anyway. If you check down below, there's a bunch of links. Links to our Twitch and to our YouTube. You're probably watching on Twitch right now. If it's not right now, you're probably watching on YouTube. Hi. Please do check out the other one. And there's links to... I'm completely fucked, by the way. I'm completely thrown out of my entire routine by this. I might be having a heart attack, but it's fine. So there's also links to our Discord, our Patreon, our social media. If you're interested in those, please check them out. We currently run 2 weekly series here on Twitch. One is Vason on Mondays and the other is Simbroom on Wednesdays. We also run one-shots on a monthly basis. The next one of which is looking like it's going to be April the 1st, which is Dungeon World, featuring Pierre and others. But over the course of the last couple of years, we've run a lot of different one-shots, a lot of different systems. Different series, various things. Please do check them out on Twitch. It would help us an awful lot. And who knows, you might even get some kind of entertainment out of it. Yeah, but we're going to do none of those things tonight. What we're going to do is talk about tabletop RPGs. And specifically, we've got kind of 2 topic headings, and we're going to try and eke out an hour-ish on both of them, probably, maybe. One of them is sort of talking about our inspirations for tabletop RPGs, and the other one is kind of talking about settings, kind of both in terms of kind of like neutral settings and IP-based settings and everything in between. We've got some questions that people have submitted on our Discord to throw into the mix, and if you have any questions while we're going about this, please do throw them into the chat, and we'll either address them when we feel they kind of fit in the discussion, or we'll throw them in at the end. Either way, it's all good. Wow, I got through that just about. No, after a rough start.
I mean, disappointing, really. Think of what views we could have had, Matt. Gosh.
Sure, yeah. Going out as I mean to, implicitly thinking that a heart attack would definitely mean my death there, which probably goes some way to explaining me as a person. But there we go. All right. So let's go to our first our first question, which is quite loose and sort of contains a bunch of different things, really. We were going to talk about our inspirations, drives, and goals for role-playing in general, and also for our own self-penned tales and campaigns. We actually have quite a few... all of us are GMs on the stream tonight in the Roundtable. And you know what? Before we start talking about our inspirations for stuff, some context probably helps, because there'll at least be one person out there who, for them, this will be their first Telling Tales thing that they've watched, right? And they'll just be like, I don't know who these assholes are. Like, what gives them the right to tell me about these things? Well, we'll tell you. And we'll start off with me, because clearly I'm the loudest. Hi, I'm Matt. I've GM'd for over 30 years now in lots and lots and lots of different systems. On the channel, I do like Simbroom and various one-shots, which is what you can see in my name bar down there. Another series and various things. I very occasionally play in role-playing games, but I am a almost permanent GM in stuff, partly because I backseat GM like some kind of crazed maniac in my head, like some kind of crazed maniac. I will almost never say anything about it, but constantly, if I'm in someone else's game, all I can think in a running ticker tape through my brain is, here's how I do it differently. Here's how I do it differently.
He's honestly not that bad when he's in the game, I promise. But occasionally, just occasionally, I look at your face if I'm running something with you and Matt, and I just go, he's totally thinking that.
I'll just be like, yeah, I won't say anything, but occasionally I will be like,
yeah,
something subtle like that.
There's no way any GM doesn't do that sometimes when they're in someone else's game anyway. It's just what you can't help it.
Yeah. Occasionally I'll just shake my head and go, shit. No, that's me anyway. Jonny.
Hiya, I'm Jonny. I have run Call of Cthulhu on this channel, which was great. I was thinking about it today, actually, like not related to this stream tonight. Just popped into my head a bit of it. I can't remember why, but yeah, I really enjoyed doing that. And Shadows of Estrin, and now doing Vesen, which is also loads of fun. I also like playing in games. I played in Sam's one shot the other week, which is good. I'm also playing in Steve's secret game, which is being recorded. And Matt has run some games for me in the past, also offline. I don't think I've played in anything of yours on stream. No, I have. Yes, Cyberpunk Mark Boggy game. Yeah.
Cyborg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that all the information that we need?
Yeah. How long have you GM'd for, Jonny? And when? Oh, how long have you GM'd for?
The first thing that I did actually was GM a game of End of the World Zombie Apocalypse for my partner at the time and two of her friends. And they jumped when somebody was on a jog past the front window. So I felt like I was doing a good job. Yeah. So yeah, that's and that was 2014. I'm relatively new to the hobby as a whole, really. I think.
Oh, no, it's nearly a decade, man. Don't
I know it is
experience,
now.
sure. Yeah, it is.
God.
Sam.
End of the World's a really nice intro one as well. Just thinking I've had similar experience with that sort of thing. But yeah, anyway, so I have run Warhammer, as you can see on the thing slightly below my name, and one-shots to the channel. Really enjoyed the Warhammer stuff we've done. Looking forward to coming back to it at some point. And I think I've done 2 one-shots. I did the Cyberpunk this time-ish last year, which was classic Cyberpunk. And then just the other week, we did the Call of Cthulhu one-shot, which was great. Had a lot of fun in that. Been thinking of that story for months and months, so it was nice to get it out. I think I'm trying to think. I would have been early on, like 2016, 2017.
Traveller
was the first thing. I think that was probably about 2017-ish.
I think that's maybe a bit late. I think it might have been 2015 or so.
I was thinking, I don't think it's that early because that's my first year of uni. I think it was after that. It would have been second or third year. I'm trying to remember.
Your first year at uni was not 2015, Sam. I met you before that.
No, it was. Promise.
I'm skeptical.
Wait, maybe you're right. Oh God, yeah, I think you're right.
I'm very right.
Okay,
I think 2015 might have been your last year. At
I think you're right. Oh God, I'm so bad at saying remember. This is why whenever you have one of those questionnaires that's like, where were you at this time and what job were you doing? I always just
how old are you?
Like half an hour. Yeah,
what's your name?
Yeah. So I think actually it would have been 2014. It would be exactly the same as Jonny, which is quite funny. My first GMing experience. Oh, there you go. Yeah, and that was Traveller, as you said. I started big, and it was suitably ambitious and chaotic and mad, as Matt will attest to.
I cordially kind of dislike Traveller because of the kind of like random nature of the character creation, and it did work. It did the character creation as a group ended with the determination that a planet I had scouted and built a homestead on. So I felt, it's nice. That's like kind of my planet. That's really cool. And the character creation for the entire group ended with one other member of the group owning the planet.
Yeah, just like a business person just came up and bought it.
And I was like, I don't need this in my role-playing games. And then too much like real life.
And then like, what was it? One session later when someone else flew off in your ship.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Good memories of good times.
Yeah, I was very cruel in that story, unnecessarily so.
So yeah, that's Sam. Steve. And Sam does also play in games. Has played in lots. Steve.
Hello. Yeah. So I'm sort of mostly a player. Where did I start? Call of Cthulhu was the first thing I played on. Oh, it was the first series I played on channel. I think maybe Alien was the first actual thing, the one shot
on the channel. Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Was that your first roleplay experience on the channel?
Oh, no, on the channel.
I was going to say you roleplayed before that, though, right?
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I kind of, I started as a kid, but bits and pieces, not a huge amount. So that was the old, ridiculously old D&D Basic Edition box set with Keep on the Borderlands, I think it was, and then kind of fell out of that sort of stuff, and then only started playing again with a group of people from work that we kind of just fell into. It started off being the soft drug board game nights, and then somebody has the bright idea of dabbling in tabletop role-playing games, and so played bits of Dungeons and Dragons, Dark Heresy, then switched over to Call of Cthulhu, and that was incredible. Played through Masks of Nyarlathotep, which was just immense, great fun. And then kind of joined up with you fine folks.
With this
So.
horrible group. Yeah. Cool. So that's us. Thanks very much for watching. Good night. Right.
John, you're wrong. John said it's starting with D&D. Well, I did start playing with D&D, but that wasn't running D&D. Which time we started running? John just put in the comment chat there. I was like, yeah, Justin started us on D&D in 2014 with an adorable session, which was just me and John playing a game run by Justin.
Just a brief pause in the flow of the stream there to prove someone in chat wrong.
Sorry, it's very important.
So let's talk about our inspirations, drives, and goals for role playing in general. Right. Okay. Just to get everyone really excited about the next hour, I don't know how I'm going to answer this question because I'm not sure I have any or many. Inspirations and no, that's rubbish. Okay, let's talk about I guess let's take these one at a time, right? So inspirations. And we can talk about it in terms of role playing in general, or we can talk about it in terms of I think another thing we've had on the question is inspiration for where do we get our crazy ideas, for writing our own stories or whatever. But in terms of inspiration for role playing, and this is where I'm going to immediately right off the start line sound like a prick. I have done this for so long, so much that I'm not nothing inspires me anymore. I'm not sure it's also embedded that I'm sure I throw in bits and pieces from everything I experience or see or watch or read or whatever. But I very rarely take something consciously and put it into either playing or GMing or role-playing in general. I would say the very little of my inspiration comes from a lot of it. I mean, quite a bit of it will come from reading a role-playing book and going, oh, okay, cool, this has these ideas and I can use this. But very little of it comes directly into my stories. And I'm more inspired, as regular viewers will know from the bits at the end of series where I ramble about what has gone into it and people go, you worked way too hard on this, Matt. I'm more inspired by themes and subtext than I am by plot, in a way. So when I guess this is crossing over with the idea of goals, but when I'm writing something or planning on it, I'm thinking about how I want to make the players feel more than anything else, and my desire to or what I want them to experience. And then I basically go, okay, well, how would I feel or experience at certain levels of that? And I try and map a course to that via plots, scenes, characters, stuff like that. So really, more than anything, and that's not to say it doesn't always happen. I might write a Call of Cthulhu thing and go, okay, I want this to be kind of Norse themed or something, right? But I still, I try and get it via the course of that subtext. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense. I think that resonates quite interestingly with what my experience of role-based quite recently is, because early on, when I did like Traveller and stuff, my entire inspiration was just, hey, this is a fun thing to play with. Let's throw people in it and see what happens. And that was all it was. And my entire objective was just making everything possible in this ridiculous, expansive, fun world. And I had no
a sandbox.
idea. Yeah,
a
exactly.
Sandbox that you could, other people would shake for you and you see what falls out.
Exactly. And that's what I've always liked to do in roleplay. And there's still elements of my games that I like that. Warhammer still has like that in it to a certain extent, for example, than any longer story does. But I think when I ran Warhammer, it was the first time I'd ever really focused from a GM's perspective on how do I want the players to feel? What sort of actual, like, environment do I want them to be in to give them a certain feel, to give them a certain kind of experience of the game, how it feels to play. Like, Warhammer's quite nice because it gives you a very neat theme, which is kind of simultaneously kind of over-the-top, kooky, fun oddness, but also actually quite grim, dark, and serious. So it's got that. It's very neatly fits that box, and you kind of know exactly how you want your players to feel. And again, with the Call of Cthulhu I did recently, literally the first thing I had before I had any of the story ideas was, how do I actually want my players to feel from it? So I completely agree with you. I don't think it was a case of being inspired by a particular story or something for those. The story was a route to getting a certain feeling out of it. Yeah, that makes sense to me. But recently that's developed for me.
Yeah. Jonny, you are nodding.
Yeah, so my the Call of Cthulhu game that we did on the stream, I've spoken on the Discord and maybe on these streams before, maybe about one particular like folk horror author that I like, who actually only has 3 books out. But he writes about like, the books are basically really slow for about 200 pages, and then everything happens in like the last 40. But then you go, oh, this has all been like, I understand how this has all kind of led to that kind of end point. And a lot of it's about like the land. Not that makes it sound really folk horror-y. It's probably less folk horror-y than people might think, in that it's not like a Wicker Man kind of. That's not exactly what he writes, but it is about almost like some of it's sort of like land heritagey kind of thing, and like the the area and the natural order of how things are. So with Call of Cthulhu, I suppose his books really inspired, but like you were saying, like the feeling that I wanted to get across when I read his books of like, I feel it's almost like for those, it was like a feeling of being unsettled for the whole thing.
Yeah.
Even though nothing's actually happened yet, you kind of feel like, oh, it feels like something's going on, but actually there's nothing to even point that anything is going on really at the moment. And then you get to the end, and
it's kind of plotting out like a route to a certain emotion or feeling or atmosphere that you want to achieve based on having experienced that by something else. But the way you map to it might carry certain elements of how it's mapped to in the other way, but like it doesn't often bring like the setting or the character styles or whatever with it. Like a good example I'd flip for that as well is like, I have run multiple games of various systems, Call of Cthulhu being probably a big one of them, where I have definitely wanted to evoke the paranoid feel of something like The Thing.
Yeah.
However, I haven't done that by setting it in Antarctica or by even having a even roughly approximately similar setup. It's just that's what I want. That's what I want to achieve. And like the ways they achieve it is how I want to achieve it, but it doesn't mean I necessarily map much of it other than I can see the tools that were used by the director and writers there.
It's funny, I've had this conversation with people about songs that I've written in the past, and the fact that, as far as I'm concerned, they're a carbon copy of another song. But actually, they sound like nobody would listen to both songs and think that there is anything alike in them. But to me, there's like a feeling that evokes that I was trying to do with that. And to me, I can listen to them both and they're the same song. So it's that same kind of thing of like taking one thing and to you can see exactly how that has influenced that thing, but
Yeah,
actually to somebody else, even if you explain it, some people might go, it doesn't seem like that to me.
Mm.
And like that's fine, but yeah, it's cool.
Yeah,
It's a nice thing to be able to do.
Do you want to name drop that author you mentioned, by the way?
Yes, Andrew Michael Hurley. He's written The Loney, which was a particular coffee shop's book award winner in 2015, I think. And then Devil's Day, and then Starve those are his 3 novels at the moment.
And I'll tell you what, Johnny, just I don't know what you're talking about with the 100 words, 40 words thing. I've never seen any of that in your role play stories at all.
the slow burn bills.
That proportion almost matches up perfectly.
Yeah. How about you, Steve?
So, being that I've played more games, I'm definitely sort of skewed towards that side of things. I can talk about things from a slightly different angle, I guess, in that. So, started playing RPGs just to have fun. That was seemed like a fun thing to do. But really, the thing that always got me was the creation aspects, especially with sort of maps and dungeons and stuff like that, and then carrying that through. When I did start looking at, I will read a lot of scenarios. My interest is looking at how things have been constructed, trying to figure out why they've been done like that, and kind of picking them apart. And do they really make good use of the system? Is there something special about it that sort of lifts it above, your bog standard adventure? And it's there was one that I ended up running, a Call of Cthulhu adventure. I think it's Tell Me, Have You Seen the Yellow Sign? And it was like a re-edited version of that came out fairly recently. The original is quite old, and it was just the way as I read it to understand it, to run it. It was the way that there were underlying themes that came out. It wasn't simply a mystery. It wasn't simply you found the clue, well done. As you went through, essentially the overall feel was that history was being repeated. The events of the scenario are an echo of stuff that's happened in the past. And it was when you saw that sort of come out, when you saw that bubble through the surface, suddenly it was a much richer story. It was a really, it was really compelling at that point. So I guess my drive is to find ways of, telling good stories that aren't simply wandering through a dungeon and opening chests, which can be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree that there's nothing wrong with playing, beer and pretzel style adventures, or you can have a fairly basic adventure stuff that does have, emotional heft and impact and stuff to it. But there is something about elevating the storytelling to, again, it's there's nothing wrong with a good basic action movie. It's a lot of fun, and you watch it, you're like, yeah, that was fun. But it's a different thing to watch a movie or read a book or whatever that really gets you in one way or another, whether that's just because it resonates with you emotionally, or because it's meaningful in some sense and carries a real message that you can either accept or reject. And role-playing, like any other creative medium, has unlike any other, I would say that role-playing has more capacity for that than film, for example, because there are things you can't do in film, even with special effects, that you can do in role-playing games. I think it probably is pretty much the same as, because role-playing games use words, it's probably the same as literature or whatever. But there's, and this is leading to one of my other inspirations, which is just imagination. And I don't think there's any medium like role-playing games for being able to inspire so much imagination with so little, not work, but work in a way. In almost nothing else, you can't just sit down and write a chapter of a book and you can, it's probably not going to be very good, but you can sit down for an hour and think about what you'll do for the next 3 hours, and then take people on that journey.
Yeah.
You couldn't do that in film. You can't do it with music. You can't do it. I mean, you can. Maybe you can with music, but like my point is falling apart. But it remains that there's very little barrier between imagination and doing it with a role playing game, and there's nothing else really like the thrill of sort of bringing that to life in a collaborative sense, whether it is true collaboration of kind of like more modern role-playing styles, or like, you know, GM-led collaboration of more traditional ways, or whatever. Like you're on that journey together in a way that almost every other medium is like, you might do it with your friends, but like what's going on internally is still just your journey. You know, in the same way that everyone dies alone, everyone watches a movie alone. And the only thing I could compare it to is obviously like sometimes playing board games is like that. Video games, I suppose, like co-op or multiplayer video games are a similar sort of thing where you're experiencing it together.
But it's such
something,
It's such a unique circumstance with it being collaborative imagination in that, though, isn't it? You're not just talking about a collaborative nature or something, but specifically because we're all collaborating and building this world, but our own experiences of it are all just in our own heads. And in our case, all the viewers, it's the same thing. Like, you know, we have hundreds of viewers or thousands of viewers, some of our videos, and to think that all of those people have experienced it, sitting there, imagining it entirely in your own head. And like, it's just the same as a book, but because a book is such a solitary and individual experience, this is a strange difference of that. But that's exactly what I feel like. I've always toyed with writing and been like, oh, I love, you know, the written word, and you can't do the same thing with drawing or with music or with film or anything else in quite the same way as you can, just because it's all in the opera of the mind, which is, I think, the most magical way of experiencing things when it works. But writing's hard, you know, as you were saying, Matt, to actually get something that really works for people and is effective and gets that sort of imagination going and isn't dull or whatever, you know, it's really hard. But when you sit down collaboratively and build something together, even if you're the GM behind it, it's very easy to get an effective sort of, as I said, opera of the mind working for everyone that we're all having a great time creating. And, you know, you'll finish a session and you'll be like, wow, did we really do all that? And all those things happened. And it's just,
like oftentimes when it's being done really well, like to one degree or another, of whether like someone kind of more leads that, like a traditional GM or whatever, a role-playing game can be like writing a very impromptu shared novel via the method of Exquisite Corpse, because it's just those things coming together. The other thing I'd like to note is I've never heard the term opera of the mind before.
Oh, I just came up with that. You can use it again if you like.
Well, if I could throw in an alternative that's been used in the role-playing scene for decades, of theatre of the mind or mind's eye theatre.
That might be what I was going for, but you know, opera sounds
the
fun.
White Wolf version.
Oh, I know.
It does.
A documentary on opera today. That's
on opera.
In my head. Literally, yeah, it's a good documentary.
Fair enough. Jonny, Steve, thoughts?
Yep.
Cool. Thanks, Jonny.
I was going to say, so one of the most powerful experiences for me was when I first. So I've somehow managed to avoid Call of Cthulhu for years, and it was only after I'd sort of played D&D and that sort of stuff that where a friend of mine decided to have a trial go, see how it worked. So there was 3 of us, 2 players, 1 keeper. We were just running through the intro scenario that's been in most of the books. The Haunting.
The Haunting, which is great.
It is, yeah. And he'd gone off, and there's loads of supplementary material on the internet. So loads of nice bits of newspaper you can print out, and so it was a really sort of investigative game with a whole load of nice props. And it was the middle of summer, so sat in his front room, sun's outside, and yet the atmosphere that the game created was such that when a car backfired on a street nearby, all of us jumped, and it was just,
that's great. And and that's I have a counterpart story to that, which I think I've told on the channel before, of the first time I ran the haunting, which was also, I think it was a late spring day, and this was back where I grew up, and like this was when I was at school and running it for like, you know, school friends. And late spring day, perfectly nice weather, and then about halfway through, like it obviously wasn't a Dericho because it was in the northwest of England. But you know when a storm rolls in and it's just all of a sudden it's like the apocalypse is happening. Like it rolled in like I don't think I've ever seen anything to this day like that. When it just rolled in and thunder, lightning, hail and rain on the windows, like literally at the point where creepy stuff was starting to happen in the house. What a gift. And that leads me on, I suppose, to the next bit of talking about inspiration is, and this leads into a thing about drives of like what keeps you going in role playing. The high as a GM, you will never forget the first time you scared someone for real. You will never forget the first time you made someone cry. You will never forget the first time you had someone thank you because part of the story meant something to them. Like, you'll never forget the first time like a player, like for me, I'll never forget the first time a player of mine got a tattoo based on like the campaign I was running. These things for me, like not only in the moment but afterwards, like if players are like talking about it or like visibly excited and thrilled by something they just participated in, or like I had quite a lot of buzz from if anyone out there watched the Cincinnati Chronicles. If you haven't, go watch them because it's the best thing I've done on the channel probably, and not very many views, so go rectify that immediately. Like when I was explaining all the like little Easter eggs and links and things that tied the different stories together, like my players looking delighted by all this, just like, oh wow, and just like as those synapses connect in what before was just my that'll be cool like scrawlings. That is a major drive for me.
That end moment is so satisfying when everything comes together and people are like, oh, that's how it worked. You're just like, oh. I still remember the one at the end of Jonny's Cthulhu when you revealed your story points are true sort of thing. I was just like, oh, what? Oh.
That was loads of fun to do those. And then in the later ones, people were going, is this the bit that's true? We know there's going to be something that's true. Is it this bit? There's no way it can be this bit. And then it was like, it was the bits where you were like, no, it's not going to be that. And it was like, yeah, it was that. That was actually
I had a very similar bit to that in like, to go the Cincinnati Chronicles again. I think in the last arc, the Changeling arc, at the end of just the first episode, there was a number of things I'd found during research of Cincinnati for it that were like literally like it couldn't have been a better gift to me of a real thing in Cincinnati to work into a Changeling the Dreaming story. And I remember like saying to the players, now several things in this thing are true and exist in Cincinnati. Can we guess what they made some guesses and they were all like, oh, that would be cool, like, but kind of a bit more of a throwaway thing. And when I explained all the stuff that was real, like just the reaction of, you are shitting me, was very, very satisfying. I mean, I didn't even do that. I just picked those things out, but it's still, it's really fun.
I don't think I've ever had anybody cry off the back of anything.
No, I was going to say I've got new goals now as well.
It's not often I do it, but I have been known.
I've once got a bit teary from a game that somebody was running for me, and that's the most I think. And it wasn't even like a long running, like I think it was like a 10-week game or something. But it was just this moment was like,
just how it came together,
just bang on, yeah.
I mean, we do between us run quite a lot of horror games, which I guess are less likely to probably to make people cry. It's more like attachment to characters and stuff that builds that up.
I do think I get like there weren't tears, but I think is it too like should I spoiler for the 3rd season of Call of Cthulhu?
Yeah. Spoilers. Skip forward a couple of minutes if you don't want to know.
Yeah, when the MP lady was found sort of strewn around a house by the other supporting NPC. And like to me that was one of my favorite moments, partly for like I'd written the description while I was out on a run and was sort of laughing maniacally to myself around my village as I was like coming up with this idea of what I was going to do, but also like the fact that now they were on their own. Like they'd had these kind of like, oh, we'll go speak to them and see, you know, we'll check back in with them and we'll ask them what we should do with this. And it was like, both of them are gone now at the same time.
That was the worst part. That was the most evil part. It was like both of the people we rely on are just, and one of them's still here, but utterly the worst in the worst circumstance.
And if they'd found any other 2 people in that situation, they'd have gone to those 2 people to ask, like, to speak to them about it. So it was like, I really enjoyed doing that.
That was great.
There's an additional aspect of that, which is because another spooky thing was the way that your sessions, they were 8 sessions. An arc is 8 sessions, and that's it. And I think we were, however far we were the way through, I was sat there thinking, oh my God, how are we supposed to salvage this in like 3 episodes? So there was the added sort of internal time pressure that I just like, well, no one else is going to sweep in and save us here. There's no way that can happen before the end. So what does he have planned?
I think go on, Matt. Sorry.
No, you.
I was just going to say, I think out of the things that I've run on the channel, it's probably between that and Jack's character in the first arc standing up to his uncle are probably the 2 most emotionally evocative bits of.
There was the bit with Inga's character as well at the end of with the circus. That was really good. Remember with her partner, was it, or like the thing of
that was cool.
That was that was so good as well.
Yeah, getting something that Steve mentioned there, like getting the tempo right in a story is another very satisfying thing, and the ability that Jonny has, and it's definitely a tool I've tried to use in the past as well, of like that kind of like pedal to the eldritch metal in the last like however long to like really just like, because it's one of the ways you can build terror, right, as well. It is kind of like you've settled into a routine, and now that routine is upset in a certain way, and all of a sudden you've been measured and paced, and now your adrenaline's rushing and you have to like achieve something in a similar fashion as well. And it's like I don't, and this is a trick, I've mentioned this on stream before and people have seen me do it, and I've mentioned so this may be not a surprise to anyone or to people who've seen me talk about this. The way in which you convey certain events happening can have a massive effect on how they're taken. So one of the examples I always use is if you describe things happening that could be taken quite casually, like bad things happening in a way that could be considered quite casual by most people in just terms of like kind of the entertainment we see nowadays, in quite a clinical or suddenly using a different kind of language or speed or anything to how people have been used to that point, it can massively have an impact. And I will gladly use an example from a story that I know Jonny was in. This is offline. This is outside before TT. And I think, Steve, like, were you in my Call of Cthulhu story set at the end of just after World War One?
Oh, no.
You weren't in that. Jonny was. You were, though, weren't you, Jonny? Yeah.
Yep.
There was a bit in that where a man was found dead in the village square, like a homeless man. and he's like been carried through to the stables. And again, this is like just post World War One, the stables of the village doctor to like examine him. And a thing happens during the autopsy where, when I said it, I think 3 out of the 5 players looked visibly ill, and one of them almost immediately after the scene asked to take a break. And it was essentially what I'll happily do. I'm quite interested in replaying the story on the channel, but I might not, but whatever. Essentially what happens is that they open up the guy's head, because there seems to be kind of like they're not sure why he's died. They can't find anything, so they're just keeping looking. And also, because the reason they open up his head is because they think someone might have been killed by gas. And one of the ways to tell if someone's been killed by gas in the style of World War One is it kind of softens their brain a bit, like makes it spongier, like, melts it a bit around the edges. And essentially, they take the top of this guy's head off, and the brains are like liquid slop that just like splash along the floor. And like there's like I described like there's a pause of everyone just staring at this, and then the doctor just vomits like and like. But the way I described it, I think I'm right in saying this, was quite clinical. Like I used very medical language, even for like the doctor throwing up. And it was such a change from like, immediately it felt like a case file or something, like a cold clinical way to refer to a character who they'd actually, this kind of likable homeless man who lived in the village center, was suddenly like this subject. And this horrible thing had happened to him, and they didn't know. I don't know. And it's just those little moments of how you describe things. And if you want an example from the channel as well for like how to change things up to inspire specific emotions, regular Simbroom viewers will remember a character called Isocles, who had, again, spoilers. If you haven't reached the Bell Tolls for Castor yet in Simbroom, you might want to skip the next couple of minutes. Who had like a sort of heroic demise as part of the story arc. And one of the ways I got over, essentially, I'd been describing the scene up to that point from a very third-person perspective. I'd been saying, this person goes here and they say this, and this person goes here and they say this. And all of a sudden, even though up to that point, a couple of people have been acting and doing things where I've been kind of describing them more, all of a sudden, I switch into acting as Isocles. And I won't go too into it, but there's a line he delivers that's resonated by an earlier point in the story. And that switch in presentation, and it's not like, this isn't like, ooh, I'm super clever. Like, go watch any film that does like, has really impactful, suspenseful moments or moments of sudden action or terror or whatever. And you'll see that it's all about that. That's what a jump scare is. But you don't have to just do a jump scare. You can inspire almost any emotion with a competent, sudden flick of the switch of the way in which things had been done.
Yeah. That moment was one of my favorite Simbroom moments as well. I remember just staring at the screen. So, that was one of my favorite.
I do aim to make someone cry on screen, on a stream. That would be good. I think I almost got there a couple of times with Inga in the Cincinnati.
Yeah.
There have been some sort of teary-eyed moments in, like Tales from the Loop was surprisingly emotional.
That wasn't it? Yeah. Just everyone playing kids, and you're kind of getting that.
And I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
And I was running the fucking thing. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, that's, I guess, like drives. I've rambled for way too long about that, but that kind of thing is what drives me to continue running role-playing games. Let's have someone else talk for a bit now, because I've gone on for too long as usual. Drives. Drive.
We're just jiving off your words. That was great.
I mean, one of your drives surely is like the world building, Sam.
Absolutely. Yeah. So my that was always my original drive. Like, I was sandbox world builder. You know, I like to build the place and put people in it, and then continue to build the place. My my game I'm building offline, which I'm going to do another test of soon, which I've refined now, is going to be literally the whole thing is exploration. And like, you build the map as you go. And I'm expecting actual players to actually do cartography and physical map measurement as part of it in the next iteration, which is going to be hilarious fun when they get it wrong and proceed to not be able to return home or something like that because they haven't drawn their map right. So literal world building, yeah. I think that's great. I've come more to appreciate like the kind of character building as well, but I think there's so much, like, as you say, you can get that emotion in specific action of characters, but I think there's actually quite a lot of feeling that can be got through like descriptions of worlds and places as well. Like, particularly if it's somewhere I think something that's very interesting is building somewhere that's very different or like other from what we know, but then bringing out like facets of our real world into it, particularly in ways that maybe critique things that we know or like make you look at something from a different angle or something like that. Like obviously, your troubles that we have in this world, say with racism, come into a role play in a really interesting way to critique it. But I think that's a really effective way of analyzing. And often roleplay gives us a really nice chance to explore this from another angle as well, doesn't it? So
I like how Sam just defined subtext.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly. Completely agree.
Yeah.
Jonny,
and I think
Steve?
because you're building because you're building that collectively, it's like such an experience to like,
Yeah.
especially in the
all
case
those
of a
different
world.
angles.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're all feeling that from different perspectives. Yeah.
Which is why, just to drive off roughly 1/3 of our viewers at this point, which is why, as in almost any creative endeavor, having a diverse group elevates your role-playing game. Because everyone comes to it with different points of view. Ergo, they can put different things in, which means everyone gets different things out.
Yeah, absolutely.
I realize the hypocrisy in us saying that as probably officially the whitest role-playing group on Twitch. Yeah. Steve, Jonny, what drives you to carry on role-playing?
Again, more from a player point of view, but well, I keep I'm running Delta Green now, so that's the thing. But it's for me looking at a whole range of different systems, finding out how they play, finding the differences between them, the things that are done well in one and or another, how they sort of promote particular reactions or emotions. Like Tales from the Loop, as I said, that was a surprise to me. I wasn't particularly comfortable with playing that game because it's been so long since I was a kid. I'm not even sure I was a kid when I was a kid, and but
I have had regular members of offline groups who have refused to play Tales from the Loop because they're like, I don't want to play Kid.
But to be fair, Steve, your character perfectly encapsulated that, which was actually adorable and amazing.
I was very careful to pick a character that was sort of.
But I think that was a nice thing. It chimed off us all, didn't it? Exactly as you're going to say. We were playing characters that connected with us all in some way. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, but the way that all came together, it was just weirdly, sort of resonant. It just worked. It was something that I didn't expect from the system, but it came out of it, and it was really sort of really wholesome and really, really, really interesting. So that in a way is my drive, if you like, is to play lots of games, see how other players play games, and obviously a key thing that we have, well, I guess at any group that role plays on Twitch, there's going to be an amount of buy-in. You can guarantee that people are going to put effort in, which means that you're probably going to get more out. So from my point of view, being able to play with the group that we have, there have been so many special moments that were kind of challenging up front, but wonderful in the moment. The ending of Bellamore, is it Bellamore? I can't. Is that how you pronounce it? I'm terrible with
Bellamore. Yeah.
Bellamore. Yeah. The ending of that was incredible and bloody frightening because I hadn't imagined that my character was the one. Everybody else got knocked unconscious or was hiding.
Yeah.
That's like,
it was so perfect as well.
So that was real sort of terror from a player point of view, not knowing what the hell to say.
And all three of us just there like watching you for that scene.
But the atmosphere there was great,
Yeah.
beyond just the suspense of the actual moment in the game. It was yeah,
Mhm.
that was hefty.
Yeah.
So yeah, just experiencing stuff like that, learning, developing, hopefully.
How about you, Johnny?
Probably, yeah. I mean, creating a story for me, which is obviously, it sounds like an obvious thing to say when you're doing a role-playing game, but I suppose there are probably lots of things where that's of less importance to some people in some games, I suppose.
Oh, definitely. I mean, go browse the OSR Reddit, and yeah, there's plenty of people who don't care about story in games. There's something wrong with that. Just
yeah, and also as but I sort of loved like the PS1 Final Fantasy games as I was growing up, because it's a large epic story and it's the characters, and that's kind of the thing that I've brought into what I want to do with games that I'm running. The sort of interpersonal relationships between player characters and ongoing NPCs. Probably no surprise to anybody who's watched any game that I've run, where sometimes I don't intervene for like 20 minutes while a conversation's taking place. Because to me, there's been so many cool moments that have happened in the conversations that people have had when they've been in those sort of stages. And it's not like, they're not high action games per se that I've been doing as the ongoing things. I think sometimes if you're doing those, like I have offline run slightly more high action things, and sometimes I'll, not as a GM, but almost with the circumstance of the situation, will hurry along planning sessions. They're getting closer, whatever, that kind of thing. But I think when you've got a full day, as it might be in Vessen, for example, where like something's happening at night and you've got a full day, let's let you have a conversation and see what you come up with, and go chat to whatever NPCs you want for as long as you want. Like, I'm fine with that, and that's almost tying into the sort of world building thing as well, that you can sit and have a cup of tea with somebody almost in real time over and have
some
a
real time
conversation.
sessions.
Yeah. And there was something else that I was going to say, but I've rambled too much.
I was just going to say as well, like that. I think those moments when you've got like absolutely the players are just going and you're just sitting back and everything's been set up. There wasn't like loads of it because it was a one shot, so there's a limited amount of time. But that moment in the Call of Cthulhu one shot recently, when I just sat back and let you three decide what to do. Apologies.
good lord.
I remembered what I was going to say. No, it's gone again. Oh no, it's back. That which is it's probably why I struggle, at least in my head, with running pre-written stuff, is because I want to be able to allow the conversations to go anywhere, and actions follow conversations, and like without knowing the entire written thing of a scenario, unless it's a sandbox thing, like something like like Curse of Strahd, where it's kind of like there's all these places they can go visit and these events will happen there. If it's like a slightly more linear progression, and I worry that I will ruin something that's being set up for later if I allow something to happen now. Whereas in something that you have written or are writing as you go along, you can make adjustments, and that what it'll affect, or maybe you haven't written what it might affect later, or you can rewrite what you were going to do later to allow for that to happen. Like it's Mary Brown, isn't it? It's my own character, the from Call of Cthulhu, I think, the MP woman. She was an incidental character, and then Inga's character had a conversation with her, and the way that I played her, it was like, oh, she ended up going for Parliament, and then I was kind of like, oh, in the next one, she could be the one that calls them in. She's an MP now. Like that wasn't planned at all. It was just like
those kind of almost like procedural elements of play where things come in. Yeah, it's funny because I think I'm probably more known on the channel for running pre-written stuff. But before I ran stuff on a channel, I've only very rarely run pre-written things. Like definitely running my own stuff is far more in what my kind of my wheelhouse. But let me tell you, folks, when you're running loads of role playing on stream every month, running pre-written stuff is a hell of a lot easier than writing all your own material. So there we go. Sam, what were you saying before you devolved into doorbells and dog barks?
Yeah, sorry. I hope I didn't deafen everyone too much with Lucky's madness. It wasn't so bad. What was I saying?
I know.
I
but you know what?
I was jiving off those moments people are talking is the best. Yeah, in Call of Duty, that moment when you three were just deciding what to do. It was only like 5 or 10 minutes. I was just like, I'm just gonna say, because all the options are terrible, and this is madness. It's just the perfect moment of now the players have to deal with this thing, and I'm not giving any more help at this point. Magic.
So the last part of this thing that we talk about, goals. What are your goals in tabletop role playing? I've achieved all mine. No. I don't have many because, and not to go back to the same well, but because I've done this for so long, it's become like doing tabletop role playing has just become part of who I am, which means I don't have many. And I so much prefer tabletop role playing to be kind of like a bespoke experience for people in terms of, well, what do you want to play? What kind of characters do you want to play? How can I fit a story around that? Not in a sandbox fashion necessarily, but I do try and like customize story to characters to and deeply involve them, which often trips me up when then like a player can't make a session and I'm like, oh, that session was all about that player. I did mentioning it so much on the stream. Cincinnati Chronicles was one of my long-running goals of role-playing, which is something I managed in that it was a story set in World of Darkness, telling 5 stories, 5 of the different World of Darkness splats, all on one day, set a crossover, full of Easter eggs. That was one of my goals, and it's not done yet. I guess I am still in search of, and always will be, I think, it's one of those things, the perfect campaign. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Something incredibly long-running that everyone gets really into. And I've definitely had a lot of elements of that. But the 2 times I think I've come closest, both of them have kind of, I wouldn't say they ended with a whimper rather than a bang. What I mean is they didn't end with a whimper rather than a bang. They kind of fizzled out. We never got there. We never made it across the finish line. Yeah. And both of them took years to not cross the finish line. So I think having that and having it cross the finish line, would be my goal. Yeah, and I think. I don't think it would feel the same to me if it was
a pre-written story. Yeah, I know what you mean.
No. Although yes, also pre-written. I think it would have to be offline and it would have to be my own story. Yeah. I don't think it would feel the same because I really like running stream role playing for people on stream. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this. I very much miss not doing that. And running games in person for friends, for no other purpose than to enjoy them. Which both post COVID and post all of my friends, including me, moving away, makes it very, very, very difficult. Which is partially why this channel exists.
I agree with you.
Those are my 2 big goals. Yeah. Oh, and I'd like to run a game of everything on that shelf.
I mean, you've got quite a few of them down.
Oh yeah, I've run a lot of them. Yeah. with
one
me like
story.
rotating between them like Ron Swanson at his
Let-
circular desk.
Let
You
me
could
turn
ro-
to page 200 of this book, and
Yeah.
yeah,
You could roll a dice every time a check has to be made to decide which system you're going to use.
Yeah,
for
and
the
they
check.
all cross over subtextually with Easter eggs, you know. Like I'm playing Blade Runner, and they stumble across a. Oh
No.
well, I fumbled that landing.
Well, multiverses are hot right now, so
Exactly.
there's certainly
exactly.
scope for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I just enjoy the stuff I create more as well. There aren't many things I came up with scratch on the channel, I don't think, but some of them are the most favorite things I've done on the channel.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a pride I can take in them that I don't like. Cincinnati Chronicles, I'm very proud of. I'm actually really proud of the 2 Mort Borg one shots, because I think I kind of nailed the
the
feel.
vibe.
Yeah.
The second one of them is so good.
Yeah, they are good. He says, yeah. What about you guys? Goals? What are your role play goals?
I was thinking, obviously, one of mine, I've mentioned it a bit already, is to have a custom system that I've made myself that I'm happy with and can run as I want to. Because I don't know, and it's one of those things where there's a bazillion systems out there that can do everything, but somehow like making it exactly to my own design is different from that, and nothing else will ever fulfill in exactly the same way. I'm really looking forward to running that in a campaign and being happy with what it is. Specifically in what it makes, because it's all about world building as part of it, but with a focus on the characters to build the world and that sort of thing. But that's obviously a long-term thing. That'll probably be forever before I'm actually happy. I'll get halfway through about 15 campaigns and then want to stop and redesign the system every time. So yeah, I think I'd like to have just a long-form campaign that I'm happy and settled with at all, because I think I've kind of only done short things, and again, they've fizzled out, but I've never really had anything that's run very long, and that's the form that I like role playing most of all. I'll do one shots, but they always feel a bit disappointing, because I mean, some systems are designed for one shots, but most systems, with the amount of effort you put into character creation, they're only really fulfilling if you've taken that character through their paces and along that journey, which you just can't get on one shots. I love that journey.
Yeah, and just from a player perspective, you were in one of the those really long-running campaigns of mine that fizzled out. But for various reasons, your character basically entered in one story, and about 2 stories later was no player character has ever been killed as thoroughly as your character was killed.
There was a very thorough killing. Yeah.
Yeah. Literally, it was a Vampire the Masquerade campaign, if anyone's interested, and literally. I think it was the first session of a new story, and Sam's character was literally ripped in half by a werewolf. Literally, werewolf is there, ripped Sam's character in half. Sam knew about this, that this was going to happen. We'd agreed it,
and it was
the
like
other players didn't.
It was the point to introduce the werewolves to the story, wasn't it? They weren't happily going about their business and just like, oh, there's werewolves here now.
I guess Sam's character is fucking dead. It was agreed Sam couldn't carry on with the campaign.
But yeah, I think that's kind of my goals. I just really want a long form story that really gets a lot of character like development is one of my main things. So I'm hoping, like, I like the idea of coming back to Warhammer and developing characters in that more and looking at other things that I can do like that as well. But it's always a case of settling as well, isn't it? And like, just same as you, Matt, doing something in person, it isn't the same. Doing things online, it's good, but it's not the same. I would like to run some stuff online, but then it's always a compromise of, do you try and find a new group of folks nearby who you might not be happy with or whatever, or do I try and somehow do it only when we get together, which is so incredibly rare that we can't do a long form thing?
Yeah, like, it's one thing to make a player cry online, but unless you can smell the tears,
precisely, and see their suffering firsthand,
feed off them. What's the Jonny, Steve?
This is like goals for the future, isn't it? Yeah. I would like to settle more into enjoying GMing while I'm doing it rather than afterwards. Because I still feel like I'm quite new to it, and I'm constantly sort of even though I've got nothing to say, it like no, I can't remember what it's called, but no like evidence-based thing that what I'm trying to do won't work out or that people
You
won't
got
enjoy
imposter
it.
syndrome.
Yeah. I mean, I have that in everything in my life, so yeah, it's no surprise that it carries over. But afterwards, I can see, you know, like when we're talking about the Call of Cthulhu stuff, I'm like, that was great, and like we all really enjoyed it. People obviously enjoyed watching it. I enjoyed running. Like I enjoy how the stories have come out. So I should have just been enjoying it more at the time rather than like afterwards looking back and going, oh yeah, that was really good. And also run Masks of Nyarlathotep.
Oh yeah.
Just a small one. Just a small one.
Just a little thing. Just a little thing. How about you, Steve?
I don't think Masks is too well. The one I played wasn't the most recent re-release, so they've probably added stuff.
It can be very short.
It can be very short. Yeah. Yeah. It's yes. I agree with Sam and Jonny both. Like playing something long form is really satisfying if you can get into it and complete it. And the great advantage of being involved in telling tales is we play an awful lot of stuff. The downside, so we're here week on week. That's great. There we go. The downside is that most of the stuff that we do is pretty limited in that's the bunny. Yeah. Pretty limited.
Dueling masks.
Sorry, Steve. This is interrupting your...
That's fine. We tend to do shorter arcs, which is nice, but I do get that. Like with Warhammer, for instance, I was absolutely ready for the idea of doing a bit of a time skip and sort of changing the world in between, changing the characters in between, just letting them jump forward a bit is a great idea. But there was so much sort of growth in that first arc that we definitely need to get back to that and do some more.
We will. Don't worry.
And that's interesting that you mentioned that, because that is something that I think can be really evocative which isn't anything really to do with goals, but can be really evocative within a role-playing campaign. Is the not necessarily time skips, although that could be good too, but the awareness that the world is moving around the players. Which is so good in a long campaign for like building things. It freshens it up. It changes the playing field, all sorts of stuff like that. Any viewers of Symbaroum who are currently watching the material will know that this is stuff that's very much started to kick in at the moment within our Throne of Thorns campaign, and yeah, that can be really good. We have talked about this for way more than an hour now, so I will just throw in a relevant question that was asked on our Discord. If anyone wants to join our Discord, you're very welcome. Sinkadus asked, when did you guys start playing TTRPGs, and what was it that got you hooked on it in the first place? We've answered the first part. We've definitely answered the first part, but just to reiterate, the first role-playing game I did was a friend of mine in my first year of secondary school, which for our American viewers is halfway through middle school. I was 11. I was about 11 or 12. And essentially I knew what role-playing games were because I owned a role-playing game. Is that out here as well? It is, but it's over on the other side, which is the Advanced Fighting Fantasy book Dungeoneer. And I'd read through it and I understood what it was about. I'd played fighting fantasy games and I was like, oh wow, role-playing sounds really cool. And when I got to secondary school, there was another kid there who became a friend of mine, and he knew what role-playing games were and he played them before with his family. And then literally we were talking about it one lunchtime at school in like the classroom on like a winter's day, so no one was going outside. We didn't go outside anyway, we were nerds, but and literally I was like, well, let's do one now. And they were like, what? But you need to prepare. And I was like, I'll just make it up. In stark difference to my role-playing principles now and what they tend to be. And we just did it. and it was awful. It was terrible, and everything that's wrong with teenage boys running role-playing games. But yeah, that's what I did. What first appealed to me? It's all the imagination. Like, I was a kid with crazy amounts of imagination. I read loads of books, fancy books specifically. I wish I still read at the rate and veracity that I had when I was that age. And I wanted to bring them to life. I wanted to like experience that with friends. And I've always been this weird mix of kind of introverted and kind of extroverted. And role-playing hits that great balance of let's all do something quite extroverted that makes us think in an introverted kind of way. That's it for me. How about, you know what we haven't had? This is a role-playing stream.
Yeah.
Let's have an answer to that question from Sam, please.
Yeah, I think I already said about 10 years ago for me. So back when I was like 19 or 20 or something like that. It was Justin that got me into it. I was going to say and John too, but I'm not. John might have roleplayed before that with someone. I'm not actually certain. But it was Justin that got both me. Yeah, he did. Yeah. Both me and John played in a game of D&D. It would have been 3.5 at the time, I reckon. That was super good. I had a great time playing that. It was just like utter ridiculousness, and Justin just allowing us to play with whatever we wanted to. And it was the first time I ever got to play a character in such a free context, I think, just messing around with something. And I think most people probably had this experience when they first, like, you know, either were shown or played or whatever role play. And it's just like, it's just different from anything else. Like, whenever you're in a social setting with other people, you always feel like there's inhibitions to communication and doing stuff, whereas that just goes out the window in roleplay, and that's just kind of a mutual agreement. And I remember finding that really freeing at the time. It's just kind of open and comfortable, and you're just playing around with people in a way that you probably wouldn't do anywhere else and feel as comfortable.
You don't get to play pretend as an adult.
Yeah, exactly. You know? And that was great. And because you're doing the play pretend, you're somehow all just in like a safe space with each other, which I think is wonderful. I think a lot of people resonate with that, which is why roleplay probably tends to like bring together quite a lot of people who otherwise might not feel safe in communities.
Yeah,
like that,
and also which makes role playing so vulnerable to people not playing safely.
Absolutely.
There we go.
Yeah, so I think that was the thing for me that really got it.
How about you, Steve? Dice says Steve.
So I was that first D&D set. I was gifted it. So clearly, someone knew that I was absolutely set for reading through rule books and looking at random tables. But yeah, it was the thing that I guess it was part of it was elements of simulation of being kind of given the freedom to. You can create a world. So for me, inventing stuff from out of nothing at all, I get kind of hung up on because I need some, sticks in the sand to frame things on. So for me, just the idea of having a system, because this dates me. Computer games were kind of a thing at the time, kind of a growing thing. Text adventure games, So to have something like that was in book form that gave you the freedom to invent worlds and things that could happen in them, that was really, a new thing. That was kind of incredible. And yes, from there it was actually, hang on, I do have down here. This is a recreation, but this is one of the first modules. Some people might get all nostalgic when they see those maps. I don't know if you ever seen them, but yeah, just like crazy stuff, fun things to explore. So that was right at the start, and then later on, it was because I found we hit critical mass with a number of players at work that wanted to have fun and had the same sort of interests, and that's kind of where it kicked off properly. And then, led on from there. And
Jonny?
Like I said, I'd always been into sort of video game RPG stuff. And I'd kind of been increasingly getting into board games. I'd always gone into my friendly local gaming shop. I used to play like Magic the Gathering, and then yes, read a lot of sort of comics and graphic novels and manga, and then was getting increasingly into board games, and so was friends with the people there, and you know, a couple of them would go, "Oh, are you still?" Because I'd kind of look around the RPG stuff and be like, and sort of, you know, what I thought I would end up playing was sort of board games with narrative elements. Because to me, as somebody who'd played the video games, that was kind of like a next step along kind of
stuff
thing.
Like Descent or Imperial Assault. That kind
of thing. And when I used to play, Games Workshop stuff when I was younger, I always liked to sort of do campaigns and have story that you would put in the middle of them, and then be like, "Oh, this battle is for this place," and I always enjoyed that, like that kind of narrative thing. Anyway, eventually I ended up going, "Oh yeah, I'll come along," like on a, when you do it every week. So the first game that I played was actually one that was written by somebody who was in the group. It wasn't even a commercial RPG. So then from the beginning, I've always been aware of like the complete DIY possibility of it. I'm not somebody who got in through D&D and then was like stuck on that for a while before finding other things or whatever. Like the first game that I played was something that they had written and printed me off copies of like this world building, like 2 pages of the world, and then a few pages of rules and stuff to do with my specific character stuff that I said I wanted to do. And then I ran End of the World. I found out it was actually 2015 that I ran End of the World, so it must have been 2014 that I started playing, 2015 that I ran my first thing, and then 2016 I started running D&D for my friends a little bit, and then that sort of, I'd planned this massive campaign and it fizzled out. And then I started the campaign again with a group of people, and then Matt joined it for a little while, and then that fizzled out because of COVID this channel.
And this channel, because I was like, I'm sorry, Jonny, I can't do another night of role playing on top of what I'm doing now.
But what I was trying to do there was this, it was meant to be an ongoing campaign. It was in D&D, but I was trying to have good characters and sort of character growth and progression, and not have it be... It wasn't a beer and pretzelsy thing, which I know a lot of people enjoy, but I was trying to have it be like a character-driven, a big adventure, like like Lord of the Rings kind of thing, where it's like you're invested in these characters, they're on this epic quest, but like the point is them rather than what's going on so much.
Which is for the curious of people, because I don't often rant about D&D on the show, but I am notorious for my kind of vague distaste for D&D, let's say. But that's my only D&D experience, is playing with Jonny, and it did actually open my eyes to D&D a little bit. Would it still be a system of choice for me? Probably not, but certainly opened my eyes anyway.
Did that conversation where Matt said, "Oh, I've got too much on with this channel, I can't keep up with this," did it end with, "By the way, Jonny, this channel"?
No, we'd already discussed me doing stuff on the channel, hadn't we? It was like we couldn't work it. It was more that we couldn't swap the day because of other people's stuff, rather than, because I think there was only the one night that you were doing at that point. It was just Simba Room, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah, it will have been just Simba Room at that point. I don't even think Vampire 5e had started yet at that stage. Yeah, it was just.
So now you got this free night, Jonny.
Well, we were doing it on Mondays, I think, at that point.
Yeah, it was Mondays.
There you go.
But like it definitely didn't happen. It was much further proximity from each other than that. But looking back on it, you could certainly interpret it as like, "Oh, I can't do your role play anymore on Monday nights, Jonny. Oh, well, I think it might fizzle out then. Oh, well, in that case, why don't you come run a game for my channel?" Okay, we will put a stop to that part of the roundtable discussion there then. And for YouTube viewers, this will probably be the end of that bit of the video. But